Hello everyone. Today we're going to be talking about what is heresy and what is its cure. The short answer is, it is love. Hello everyone, and God bless. This is Father Mikhail, Father Michael, with another episode, another reflection on living Orthodox. I've, of course, seen and I've had sent to me some very interesting things in response to my Marmari Emmanuel video series, and really just the warning that I'm giving about him as an historian. That's what he is. He is an historian, and before I get to the main content of my video, I will be doing a reply to his reply at some point, his sermon, where he goes on to defend that he's a Trinitarian. Nobody's attacking that he's not a Trinitarian. I am attacking his faulty Christology. And what prompted me to also make this video is that people seem to have this terrible, forgive me for the terms that I'm going to use here, Americanized kind of cartoony perception of what should constitute truth or what should constitute heresy. And so many people say, well, but he says the truth on many things. Yes, but Satan also quotes scripture to Christ when he tempts him in the Gospel of Matthew. He quotes the Psalms, Psalm 67 more specifically, when he says, if you will not dash your foot against a stone if you throw yourself from this temple, for it's written that his angels will bear thee up. You will not dash your foot against a stone. But he leaves out the last part of that psalm, because the last part actually talks about how he would tread upon the serpent, the basilisk, the asp, how he would overcome the devil. And of course, Psalm 67 is a good prayer that we can all pray generally, even for ourselves, for God to protect us from such temptations. But that said, in closing remark on Marmari for this video, because like I said, this will be getting its own video, nobody attacked him for not being a Trinitarian. We know that he holds Trinitarian views. How he views the Trinity is certainly going to be different than how we view the Trinity. But the thing that I'm calling out on with him is his Christological heresy, which he actually, in his attempt to avoid the question, does end up yet again professing Nestorianism when he talks about Christ having a human and a divine side, which, again, Christ is one divine person. He doesn't have sides. That again shows the sharp distinction between the natures that Nestorianism tries to draw by making each nature its own hypostasis, but somehow divorced from an actual person. Whereas there's this idea that there's a thin union between these two hypostatic realities in what they call a parsop, or what we would say is a prosopon, which again does not line up with proper Orthodox Christology. But again, that's its own video. So moving into the main content of this video, what is heresy? Heresy quite literally just means to choose, but it means to choose error, to choose apart from what is true. And so we see terms like heresy and heterodox. I've had some people ask, why call someone a heretic? Should we just call them heterodox? The two are actually interchangeable. A heretic is just a short form of saying a heterodox person, somebody who teaches error, who has chosen to be apart from the church. So that is what an hereticos is, someone who chooses apart, who chooses to be apart from the church, who essentially pushes himself into schism via falling out of the proper teachings. St. Paul frequently in his epistles warns us not to listen to a false gospel. A lot of people, especially coming from a Protestant background, means, oh, well, that literally means a gospel that's not one of the four accepted gospels. As long as we accept Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, then that's fine. That's not what that means. A false gospel can also pertain to teaching falsehoods about Christ. Even in the time of the last apostle, there were heretics, such as the Gnostics, who were trying to push false ideas about Christ and false ideas about God, looking at the God of the Old Testament as evil and different from the God of the New Testament, all sorts of crazy things. And of course, on the surface, we can see where they might have drawn their logic, because to them, they thought they saw a distinct change from the God of the Old Testament to the God of the New, but this isn't true. The other side of it is that we have people who, unfortunately, do end up accepting other heresies, such as Arianism, which is the heresy that taught that Christ is a created being that's not consubstantial with the Father. and thus not making him truly God, because only God can be uncreated. And this is why in the Nicene Creed, the creed that my church recites and many others do, is that he is one with the Father in essence. He is of one essence with the Father, by whom all things were made. He's light of light, true God of true God, begotten, not made, being of one essence with the Father, by whom all things were made. And Arianism, of course, fundamentally denies this. Now, many Arians would not call themselves Arians. They would think that they are merely the correct church and that they've been persecuted. And this is where we get into another area with this discussion. A lot of people want to bring this very humanistic view of the church, in which it's all about feelings. It's all about just having a nice little kumbaya session because we all drop the same name in a conversation. Being a Christian is not name dropping Jesus, and it's not holding to a ethical, moral philosophy or self-help system, as a lot of the time it does unintentionally become branded as, especially with how the Bible gets treated by many mainline evangelicals, and unfortunately by some well-meaning, although I would say not well enough educated Orthodox who tend to think that, oh, well, and I've seen this online. I've seen Greek Orthodox and some other Eastern Orthodox people saying, who's Nestorius? Oh, Lord have mercy. I mean, the 7 ecumenical councils should be something that every person is catechized about when they're coming into the church. They should have at least a preliminary knowledge of what the main 7 ecumenical councils were about. There's more than 7. There's, I believe, 8, 9 ecumenical councils. And there's councils that are elevated to ecumenical status, such as the Palamite synods. We have our essence-energies distinction, right? That God is unknowable in his essence, but that the energies come down to us, as St. Basil the Great says. And I've seen people accuse me of not teaching the teachings of the saints and trying to promote my political agenda. I don't have a political agenda. I'm an Eastern Orthodox priest. My political agenda, if there is one, is what Father Daniel Sasoyev, who is a great hero martyr from Russia, had said. It's iranopolitical. In other words, my position is completely, or at least seeks to completely be in tune with what is the law of God. That is the only thing I am concerned about. Does this uphold God's law when it comes to children, to sexual morality, to ethical morality with things such as MAID, for example, which here in Canada is MAID is short for medically assisted induced death. So in other words, it's suicide by doctor. But heresy, coming back to it from Arianism, which denies the divinity of Christ and the consubstantiality of him with the Father, to Nestorianism, which also denies his divinity by drawing a sharp divide between his human nature and his divine nature, to the point where they have their own distinct hypostases, their own concretized realities, or sides, as Marmari called it, to the Monophysites, who mush his essence into a third new thing, in which it's not, he's no longer fully God, he's no longer fully man, but some strange amalgamation of the two, which again separates him from the Father and from us. He becomes his own thing, a tertium quid, I believe is the proper term. Then there's monothelitism, which says that Christ has only one will, and there's monergism, which is a heresy that says he has only one energy. And the problem with that is that will and energy are actually properties of nature that are, of course, actualized by a person. And yet again, or by an hypostasis, in other words, and yet again, we see one of the most common threads in heresy is that there's a failure to make a distinction between nature and hypostasis, or nature and person. It either applies to the Trinity, or this applies to humanity, where they make this fundamental error. Heresy is, again, it's just an incorrect belief. A lot of people now think it's a pejorative, and maybe this is because of things they've seen in Hollywood or different forms of media where it's used like a pejorative. The term heretic is really just a category. And so when I use this to describe Marmari Emmanuel, Pope Francis, or anyone else, I'm not saying this to be insulting. When I'm being emphatic, it might sound that way to some who are maybe very sensitive. And again, I'm sorry if that's how it comes across. I'm not sorry for what I said, and I'm not going to apologize for what I said. I do consult with my spiritual father, and I do have the blessing of my bishop to do this YouTube channel. I am a canonical priest, and I've had some people even try to question my credentials. Honestly, and again, I don't say this to come across a certain way. If you plug my name, Father Mikhail Balika, into Google, you will find articles of my ordination. You will find pictures. You will even find videos of it. There's a video of my ordination because, I happened to be ordained on the day that we buried the Blessed Metropolitan Ilarion, Capral. And so a lot of people were there. Pretty much, well, everyone in Rocourt was there. And I was ordained there. I was ordained at Holy Trinity Monastery at that time. So my credentials are that I am a canonical Eastern Orthodox priest. I do have a seminary background doing distance studies because I live all the way up in Canada. I have a family. I can't move to the States and go and study in person. There's my credentials. I've always been very transparent about who I am, what my goals are. My goals are to bring people to the Eastern Orthodox Church and also to protect Orthodox Christians from error. I don't compromise. That's just the thing, and it can come across as harsh. This is the cure to heresy, this portion. The cure to heresy is love. You have to love people enough to tell them the truth. You don't go, maybe you should get off the road. That bus is going to come and hit you. You say, get off the road now, and you pull them. You don't just waste your time. You never know how much time either of us have. As Father Seraphim Rose says, it's later than we think. I just get to the point. I'm not going to pussyfoot and try to find the most delicate way to say that somebody's wrong to try and sound nice. I'm not interested in all reality in gaining celebrity. I think I make it very clear. It's not a popular thing that I did with calling out Marmari. It's had a lot of views. I made this video mostly because I saw a lot of people in my vicinity being confused by him. There were people who were confused by him that I knew in person. And I really made that video for people like them, for people I know. And I shared it because I was hoping that it would help people, and thanks be to God, it has helped many people. And I will continue to do what I can to help. The cure for heresy is love. Love is the cure. Now, a lot of people might get confused by that because we get promoted this false notion of love all the time, where it's just soft talk and avoiding hurting the other person's feelings. No, when you love someone, you tell them the truth. This is fundamental to making any marriage work, and this is fundamental to living a life as a Christian. You have to love the truth for the person that is the truth, that is Christ, and you have to love the people enough who are seeking Christ to tell them what is true and what is false, even if it's coming from their own mouths. You have to be willing to love that person's soul enough to put the risk that they will hate you or be mad at you in order to tell them the truth. Now, that doesn't mean you go and tell people they're going to hell. St. Paisios even talks about this and says that we need to give them a good uneasiness. Now, we mustn't tell them they're going to hell, but we certainly can't tell them they're right. Their doctrines, their false ideas about Christ, about the church, depending on which sect they come from, will not save them. We even see this with John MacArthur. He's a Calvinist, and he falls into Nestorianism where he says it would be heretical to call the blood of Christ the blood of God. Well, then if Christ is not God, who is he? Again, we're destroying the idea of the incarnation. We're completely separating the person. We're splitting the divinity and the humanity so sharply they might as well be two different people at that point. Rather than the beauty of the hypostatic union, which is Christ fully became man and he remains fully God. He's a divine person. He's not a divino-human, and he's not a human person with divine nature. He is a divine person who assumed human nature. And he remained a divine person after the incarnation and remains a divine person to this day. Now, that said, we're not Apollinarians. We don't destroy we don't try to say that Christ doesn't have a human mind or a human will. He has everything appropriate to human nature. Everything that makes us human, he has. But the difference is being a divine person, having a divine nature, he submits his human nature in perfect submission to the will of the Father, to the divine will. And he's, and whenever we see him perform a divine action, we are seeing that divine aspect of those divine energies being actualized through him, because he is the person. He's the person who actualizes these things. These are not separate things. I will expand on this further, but to wrap this video up, Marmari once said, and this came from a former parishioner of his, that Christ the man lifts his hand, but the Logos raises Lazarus. So right there we see that there's a divide, whereas the Orthodox proper Christian perspective is that Christ is God. Christ rose his hand and rose Lazarus from the dead. No divide that way. We don't divide the natures so sharply that they might as well be two separate persons working together, or that it's some kind of conjunction. We don't say that Christ is created and that there was a time where he wasn't. That's Arianism. We don't say that Christ is something new that he is a divino-human or a meophysis, that is the conglomeration of two natures into one new nature. We maintain that he's one divine hypostasis, one divine person of the Holy Trinity who became man. He is fully God, fully man. Leave it at that. Keep it simple. Then there's another heresy. And this one actually, in the name of love, destroys love. And that is the pan-heresy of ecumenism. Ecumenism is a humanistic, worldly, syncretistic ideology. Its purpose is to tell you it doesn't matter. All you need to do is believe in Jesus. It's okay. These are just debates. These are just differences of opinion. Just focus on what the saints say. Don't point out any errors. Except all of the early saints, a lot of the great church fathers, they pointed out error. We cannot forget them. We cannot push them aside. We cannot silence their voices. When we silence their voices, we end up completely handicapping the church and its mission to go into all the world to fulfill Matthew 28. So we have to be very careful that in the name of love, we don't destroy love. That, the love we cry out for, we ourselves lack. We see this from many different people. I made a post about that a while ago concerning a Orthodox online personality who cries out for others to have love, but starkly lacks that love himself. And we see this even with the rabid intensity that a lot of Marmari's followers have. They cry, "Oh, love, 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 love," but then they'll call people like me or other people who've called out Marmari online demons, evil. None of us ever called Marmari evil. I've never called Marmari evil. I've never said he's a demon. I've said that his teachings are demonic, that they're energized by the evil one, that his teachings are erroneous, because that is just true. Coming from the Orthodox perspective and looking at it in the light of Scripture, what the saints teach, the ecumenical councils, all these things together, that's just objectively true. Sorry if you don't like it. The truth sometimes stings. But we got to get rid of this Hollywood idea that the bad guy is going to make it clear that he's the bad guy, for lack of a better term, that Nestorius is going to show up and go, "I'm evil." He's not. No heretic is going to go, "Well, guys, I'm a heretic. This is what I believe." Unless he's a really arrogant, narcissistic individual, then he might do something like that and not think that there will be any repercussion. But in all reality, heretics have always tried to disguise their teachings as orthodox, and they will use similar words to us because they want to inject, they want to push in their ideas in order to prop them up. But their ideas can't defend themselves, so they have to use subversive language, loaded terms. Love sheds the light on all these things. It ultimately has to be born of a love for Jesus Christ. If you love Christ, then you will love the truth. And if you love Christ and you love him because he is the way, the truth, and the life, then you will not abide by any error, and you will not let yourself fall into any Christological errors. You will uphold that he is only one person, one hypostasis, that he has two natures, that he took on human nature, universal human nature, to unite divinity and humanity within himself. And thus, as St. Paul wrote to Timothy, he is the sole mediator between God and man, because he is God and man. And that is beautiful. That is the economy of salvation. He became man, as St. Athanasius the Great said, so that man might become God. So when we strive to have love for Christ, because if we say ourselves, "I love God perfectly, I love Jesus perfectly," then we're fooling ourselves. We are lying. If we did, there are so many other things we'd be doing better, including myself. But we must strive and struggle to love Christ. It is an effort. It's a worthwhile struggle. It's a worthwhile cross to bear. There are many times where, for the love of Christ, we have to deny ourselves certain pleasures. Today is Wednesday. We should not be eating meat, dairy, olive oil, eggs, you name it. It's the forefeast to the meaning of the Lord. We instead should be loving Christ enough to empty ourselves, to put aside our personal likes, taste, and dislikes, and strive for holiness so that we can be with Christ. That's the whole aim of the Christian life. And only the Orthodox Church gives us a complete ability to do this, to be united to him physically and spiritually. And so, again, to put this to rest, I don't have hatred for other Christian people who are not Orthodox. I actually have love for them. I love them enough that I pray and hope they become Orthodox. because it is not love to make them feel comfortable in their camp. What is love is exactly what St. Paisios said, and that is to give them a good uneasiness. With that said, thank you for tuning in. God bless you all. Have a wonderful day, evening, wherever you are, whatever time it is. God bless you.